Marcus has two jobs, works 70 hours a week, and still can't afford an emergency car repair. Meanwhile, his college roommate, who works 40 hours a week, just bought his third rental property. What's the difference? It's not intelligence, work ethic, or luck. It's psychology. Welcome to Mind Vault, where we unlock the psychology behind money, success, and human behavior. Today, we're diving into one of the most uncomfortable truths about poverty. It's not just about lack of money. It's about a set of psychological traps that keep people stuck in cycles they can't escape. And before you think this is about blaming poor people, stick around, because what you're about to learn will make you angry at the system, not the victims. Let me start with a statement that's going to make some people uncomfortable. Poverty isn't just about not having money. If it were, lottery winners wouldn't go bankrupt at alarming rates, and people who inherit wealth wouldn't blow through it in a few years. Poverty is a psychological condition that persists even when money temporarily increases, because the mindsets, behaviors, and emotional patterns that create poverty remain unchanged. Here's the thing that nobody talks about. Being poor is incredibly expensive, both financially and psychologically. When you're poor, you can't afford to buy quality items that last, so you end up spending more money over time replacing cheap things that break. You can't afford preventative health care, so you end up in emergency rooms with expensive crises. You can't afford to buy in bulk when things are on sale, so you pay premium prices for everything. But it gets worse. The psychological cost of poverty is even more devastating than the financial cost. Let me introduce you to what researchers call scarcity mindset, a mental condition that happens when your brain is constantly operating in survival mode because resources are limited. When you're in scarcity mindset, your brain is so focused on immediate survival needs that it literally cannot think long-term. It's like trying to plan your retirement while you're drowning. Your brain is screaming, "Get air now," and can't process anything beyond the immediate crisis. This is why poor people often make decisions that seem irrational to people who aren't poor. Their brains are operating under completely different conditions. Harvard economist Sendil Mullainathan did research showing that poverty actually reduces cognitive capacity. When people are worried about money, they perform worse on cognitive tests, not because they're less intelligent, but because mental bandwidth is being consumed by financial stress. It's like trying to run complex software on a computer that's already using 90% of its processing power, just to stay on. This creates what I call the poverty IQ tax. Poor people are making crucial life decisions with reduced cognitive capacity because their brains are overwhelmed by financial stress. It's like being asked to take a final exam while someone is screaming in your ear about all your problems. Good luck making optimal choices under those conditions. Let's talk about the psychology of immediate gratification versus delayed gratification. The famous marshmallow experiment showed that kids who could delay gratification ended up more successful in life. But here's what that experiment missed. It's easy to delay gratification when you trust that the second marshmallow will actually show up. When you grow up poor, you learn that promises about the future are often broken. The electricity gets shut off even though mom said it wouldn't. The promised birthday present never materializes. Your brain learns that the future is unreliable, so you better take what you can get right now. This creates present bias, overvaluing immediate rewards and undervaluing future ones. It's not that poor people lack willpower. It's that their lived experience has taught them the future is a promise that usually gets broken. Here's another psychological trap, the poverty visibility tax. When you're poor, every financial decision is judged. Buy name brand cereal? Wasting money. Buy generic? Not feeding your kids right. Meanwhile, wealthy people spend $200 on wine and it's being a connoisseur. Same behaviors that are smart investments for rich people become irresponsible choices for poor people. Let's talk about the psychology of debt, because this is where things get really dark. When you're poor, debt isn't a choice, it's a survival mechanism. Your car breaks down and you need it to get to work, but you don't have $500 for repairs, so you put it on a credit card with 25% interest. Now you're paying for that repair for years, which means you have even less money next month when the next emergency happens. This creates what I call the debt spiral psychology, where each financial crisis creates debt that makes the next crisis more likely and more expensive. You're not climbing out of a hole. You're digging it deeper with every emergency, and your brain knows it. This creates learned helplessness, the psychological condition where you stop trying because experience has taught you that trying doesn't work. The psychology of financial shame is another massive barrier. Society treats poverty as a moral failing, so poor people internalize shame about their situation. This shame prevents them from seeking help or asking questions. Compare this to wealthy people, who hire financial advisors without worrying it makes them look dumb. This shame gap means poor people make complex financial decisions without guidance, while rich people get expert help for everything. Here's a psychological pattern that perpetuates poverty: the broke person's discount. This is the counterintuitive reality that being poor prevents you from accessing money-saving opportunities. Can't afford a Costco membership? You pay more for everything. Can't afford to buy a reliable car? You pay more in repairs and lost wages. Can't afford rent in a safe neighborhood? You pay more in health costs and lost opportunities. The psychology here is brutal. Poverty prevents you from accessing the very things that would help you escape poverty. It's like being told the cure for your illness is at the top of a mountain, but you can't climb the mountain because you're sick. The condition itself prevents the solution. Let's talk about the poverty of aspiration. When you grow up poor, you lack exposure to possibilities. You don't have mentors or examples of people who escaped poverty, doing anything other than sports or entertainment. Your brain literally cannot imagine pathways out because you've never seen them. You can't pursue software engineering if you've never met a software engineer. The social psychology of poverty is equally devastating. Poor people often have social networks full of other poor people, which sounds obvious but has massive psychological implications. Your friends and family are facing the same financial struggles you are, which means two things. First, they can't help you financially when you need it. And second, they need your help when you finally get a little bit ahead. This creates the crab bucket effect, named after how crabs in a bucket pull down any crab trying to escape. Your social circle, often unconsciously, sabotages your attempts to improve your situation because your success highlights their failure, or because they need you to stay at their level for emotional or financial support. Get a better job? Your family needs money. Save some money. Your friend needs help with rent. Move to a better neighborhood? You're abandoning your community. The psychology of just-in-time living is another trap. When you're poor, you're constantly operating in emergency mode. Every decision is about addressing the most urgent current crisis, which means you never have time or mental space to plan, prepare, or prevent future crises. You're so busy bailing water out of the boat that you can't fix the hole causing the leak. This creates what researchers call psychological tunneling, where financial stress literally narrows your field of attention to only immediate concerns. Long-term planning, skill development, relationship building, health maintenance, all of these get sacrificed because your brain is in survival mode dealing with today's emergency. Let's discuss the absolute psychological killer, the internalization of poverty identity. When you're poor long enough, poor stops being your situation and becomes your identity. You start thinking, I'm a poor person, rather than, I'm a person who's currently experiencing poverty. This identity shift is devastating because identities are self-reinforcing. If being poor is part of your identity, then escaping poverty feels like betraying who you are. Your brain will actually sabotage opportunities that conflict with your identity because it's trying to maintain psychological consistency. This is why lottery winners often end up broke again. They got money, but their poverty identity remained unchanged, so they unconsciously recreated the financial situation that matched their identity. The psychology of financial literacy gaps makes everything worse. Schools don't teach personal finance, especially in poor neighborhoods. Parents who never learned can't teach their kids. Meanwhile, rich kids grow up hearing dinner table conversations about investments and wealth building. They absorb financial literacy through osmosis. By adulthood, they have sophisticated understanding that poor kids never accessed. Now let's talk about the psychological impact of systemic barriers. Poverty isn't just individual choices. It's shaped by racist housing policies, discriminatory lending, unequal education funding, and criminal justice systems that trap people in cycles of poverty. The psychology of navigating these systems is exhausting. When you know the system is rigged against you, it affects your motivation and self-efficacy. Why try when the game is fixed? This isn't an excuse, it's a rational response to observable patterns. The psychological toll of fighting uphill battles constantly depletes the exact resources, hope, energy, resilience that you need to escape poverty. So how do you break free from the psychology of poverty? First, understand that this isn't about blame or personal responsibility alone. Poverty is a systemic issue with psychological components. You can address the psychological aspects while advocating for systemic change. Start by separating your identity from your financial situation. You're not a poor person. You're a person experiencing financial constraints. This might seem like semantics, but identity shapes behavior. When poverty is your situation, rather than your identity, you give yourself psychological permission to change that situation. Build what I call future self-reliability. Start with tiny promises to yourself that you keep even when it's hard. Save $5 this week. Apply to one new job. Read one article about investing. These small wins rebuild your brain's trust that future-focused actions actually pay off. You're literally retraining your psychology to believe the future is worth investing in. Seek out possibility models, people who came from similar backgrounds and created different outcomes. Not celebrities or outliers, but regular people who navigated paths out of poverty. Learn their strategies, mindsets, and decisions. You're building cognitive frameworks for what's possible and how to achieve it. Address the shame by finding communities where financial struggle is discussed openly and without judgment. Online forums, support groups, or financial counseling services where you can ask stupid questions without fear. Every rich person you know asked stupid questions to get smart about money. They just did it in private with paid experts. Practice what I call poverty arbitrage, finding ways to access middle-class resources from a working-class budget. Libraries offer free internet, courses, and books. Community colleges provide education at fraction of university costs. YouTube offers free education on everything from coding to investing. The resources exist. You need the psychological shift to see yourself as worthy of accessing them. Build financial buffers in psychological layers. First goal, $100 emergency fund. Not $1,000. That's overwhelming. Just $100. That small buffer changes your psychology from any emergency destroys me to I can handle small emergencies. Then build to $500, then $1,000. Each layer provides psychological safety that enables better decision-making. Most importantly, understand that escaping poverty requires both practical and psychological work. You need to change your financial behaviors and your mental models about money, success, and what's possible. One without the other won't work. Practical changes without psychological shifts lead to self-sabotage, while psychological shifts without practical action lead to nothing but positive thinking. The psychology of poverty is brutal, systemic, and often invisible. But it's not permanent. Your brain is capable of neuroplasticity, of building new neural pathways that support different behaviors and beliefs. Every person who escaped poverty had to rewire their psychology first, then their circumstances followed. If this video gave you new perspective on the psychology of poverty, smash that like button, subscribe to MindVault for more insights that combine compassion with brutal honesty, and forward this to someone who might benefit from understanding these psychological traps. Until next time, remember, your current situation isn't your final destination unless you let the psychology of poverty convince you it is.